She let her autistic son turn the hot tub into his personal playground while I sat there, overstimulated and trapped. When I finally spoke up, her response destroyed everything I believed about acceptance and inclusion. What happened next exposed the ugly truth about performative parenting. I never thought I'd be the person complaining about a child in a public space, but sometimes life forces you into situations that challenge everything you thought you knew about yourself. My name is Xander, I'm 28 years old, and I'm autistic. This is the story of how one afternoon at a community center changed my perspective on advocacy, boundaries, and what real inclusion actually looks like. The Maplewood Community Center had always been my sanctuary. I discovered it 3 years ago when I moved to Denver, Colorado. Desperate to find a quiet space where I could decompress after overwhelming days at my job as a graphic designer, the facility had everything I needed: a small gym with predictable equipment, a library corner with comfortable chairs, and most importantly, a hot tub that was usually blissfully empty during weekday afternoons. I had developed a routine that worked perfectly for my sensory needs. Every Tuesday and Thursday at exactly 3:30 p.m., I would arrive with my noise-canceling headphones, a book, and a towel that I'd washed in unscented detergent. The hot tubs, warm water, and gentle jets provided the perfect sensory input to calm my nervous system. After hours of fluorescent lights and client meetings, I would sit in the same spot every time, back against the jets, book in hand, letting the warm water work its magic on my chronically tense muscles. The first time I saw Roxanne Fletcher, she seemed like the kind of mother I respected. She arrived with her son Jasper, who appeared to be around 8 years old, and I immediately recognized the signs of autism in his movements and vocalizations. She spoke to him in calm, measured tones, explaining the rules of the pool area and helping him understand the environment. I felt a kinship with them both, remembering my own mother's patient guidance through similar situations when I was young. "Remember what we talked about, Jasper?" Roxanne said softly as they approached the hot tub area. "This is a quiet space where people come to relax. We use our inside voices and gentle movements." Jasper nodded seriously, his hands flapping slightly with excitement. "Quiet space, gentle movements," he repeated, and I smiled to myself. This was exactly how inclusion should work, teaching appropriate behavior while accommodating neurodivergent needs. For several weeks, our paths crossed at the community center, and I genuinely enjoyed seeing their progress. Jasper was learning to navigate the space with increasing confidence, and Roxanne seemed dedicated to helping him understand social expectations while honoring his autism. We exchanged polite nods and occasional small talk about the weather or pool temperature. I felt optimistic about sharing this space with another autism family. "Your book looks interesting," Roxanne commented one Thursday as she helped Jasper into the hot tub. "I'm always looking for recommendations for quiet activities." "It's about sensory processing," I replied, holding up the cover. "I find reading about neuroscience helps me understand my own brain better." "That's wonderful," she said, settling beside Jasper. "I'm always trying to learn more about how to support Jasper's needs." Our conversations were brief but pleasant, and I appreciated having someone who understood the challenges of navigating the world as an autistic person or autism parent. I thought we had an unspoken agreement about maintaining the peaceful atmosphere that made this space so valuable for both of us. But something began to shift in Roxanne's approach over the following weeks. What started as gentle guidance gradually became increasingly permissive indulgence. I noticed Jasper's volume levels creeping higher, his movements becoming more disruptive, and Roxanne's corrections becoming less frequent and less firm. The first red flag appeared on a particularly difficult Tuesday. I had arrived at the community center after a brutal day at work involving a demanding client presentation and a malfunctioning air conditioning system that had left me overstimulated and exhausted. The hot tub was my lifeline that day, the only thing standing between me and a complete sensory meltdown. I had been soaking for about 15 minutes, finally feeling my nervous system begin to settle when Roxanne and Jasper arrived. But instead of their usual calm entry routine, Jasper immediately began jumping up and down beside the hot tub, his voice echoing off the tiled walls. Hot tub, I want to splash and play," he shouted, his excitement level clearly elevated beyond his usual range. "Jasper, remember our quiet voices," Roxanne said, but her tone lacked the firm authority I had grown accustomed to hearing. Jasper lowered his voice for approximately 30 seconds before the excitement overtook him again. He climbed into the hot tub and immediately began making waves with his arms, splashing water over the edges while making loud vocal stimming sounds that reverberated through the enclosed space. I felt my shoulders tensing, my carefully cultivated calm evaporating as the sensory assault intensified. The unexpected splashing triggered my tactile sensitivities, while the echoing vocalizations hit frequencies that made my skin crawl. I tried to use my coping strategies, focusing on my breathing and attempting to redirect my attention to my book, but the disruption was too intense. "Roxanne," I said quietly, hoping to address the situation without creating conflict. "Would it be possible to help Jasper use a quieter voice? The acoustics in here really amplify sound." She looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "He's just excited to be here. This is how he expresses joy." "I understand that," I replied, trying to keep my tone respectful. "I'm autistic too, and I know how important stimming can be. I'm just asking if we could work together to find a middle ground that works for everyone." Roxanne's demeanor shifted noticeably. "Jasper has just as much right to be here as you do. He shouldn't have to suppress his natural behaviors just because you're uncomfortable." The conversation ended there, but I could feel the tension settling between us like a heavy blanket. I stayed for another 10 minutes, trying to salvage some benefit from my routine, but the peaceful atmosphere had been shattered. I left feeling more agitated than when I had arrived, my nervous system humming with overstimulation and frustration. Over the next several visits, the pattern repeated and intensified. Jasper's behavior in the hot tub became increasingly disruptive, with Roxanne offering minimal intervention and maximum justification. She seemed to have adopted a philosophy that any attempt to modify Jasper's behavior was somehow oppressive or ableist. "He's exploring his environment," she would say when Jasper began using the hot tub jets as personal entertainment, positioning his body to create maximum turbulence. Autistic children need to experience the world on their own terms. "This is his way of regulating," she would explain, when his vocalizations reached volumes that made conversation impossible and sent other patrons fleeing the area. "I won't suppress his natural coping mechanisms." I watched with growing frustration as the hot tub area, once a haven for anyone seeking quiet relaxation, became Jasper's personal sensory playground. Other community center members began avoiding the space during times when Roxanne and Jasper were likely to be there. An elderly man named Gregory DeDarbo, who had been using the hot tub for physical therapy after knee surgery, stopped coming altogether after Jasper's splashing repeatedly soaked his reading materials. "I don't want to cause trouble," Gregory told me during one of our brief encounters in the locker room, "but I come here for my rehabilitation, and I can't get the benefit I need when it's so chaotic." A woman named Iris Ist, who worked night shifts as a paramedic and relied on afternoon hot tub sessions to decompress, began timing her visits to avoid overlapping with Roxanne and Jasper. "I have nothing against the boy," she confided, "but after 12 hours responding to emergencies, I need silence, not stimulation." I found myself caught between my understanding of autism advocacy and my own desperate need for accessible spaces. I believed deeply in inclusion and accommodation, but I was struggling to understand how Jasper's right to unlimited sensory expression trumped everyone else's right to use the space as intended. The situation reached its breaking point on a Thursday afternoon that I will never forget. I had been looking forward to this hot tub session all week, having endured several particularly challenging days at work involving a difficult client and multiple sensory hostile meetings. My nervous system was running on empty, and I desperately needed the restorative power of warm water and silence. I arrived at my usual time to find the hot tub area mercifully empty. I settled into my preferred spot, feeling the warm jets begin their work on my tense muscles. For the first time in days, I could feel my breathing deepening and my hypervigilance beginning to fade. I opened my book and allowed myself to sink into the peaceful ritual that had become so essential to my mental health. 20 minutes later, Roxanne and Jasper arrived. And immediately, I could sense that Jasper's energy level was significantly elevated. He was bouncing on his toes, vocalizing at higher volumes than usual, and displaying the kind of excitement that typically indicated he was already overstimulated when he arrived. "Jasper, remember our hot tub rules?" Roxanne said half-heartedly as they approached. But Jasper was beyond listening to verbal instructions. He ran to the hot tub edge and, without any pause or preparation, launched himself into the water with a tremendous splash that soaked not only me but also my book, my towel, and my bag containing my phone and headphones. The shock of the unexpected cold water hitting my warm skin triggered an immediate sensory panic response. My book was ruined, my electronics were potentially damaged, and my carefully regulated nervous system went into complete chaos. But Jasper wasn't finished. He began jumping up and down in the hot tub, creating waves that sloshed over the edges with each movement. His vocalizations escalated to joyful shrieks that echoed off every surface, creating a cacophony that felt like physical assault on my hypersensitive auditory system. The peaceful sanctuary I desperately needed had been transformed into a sensory nightmare. "Wee, big splash, more splash," Jasper shouted, throwing his arms up and creating even larger waves. I looked at Roxanne, expecting her to intervene, to provide some guidance or limitation, but she was smiling indulgently at Jasper's behavior. When she noticed my distressed expression, her smile faded into defensiveness. "He's just having fun," she said, but there was a challenge in her voice. "Roxanne, please," I said, trying to keep my voice level despite the panic rising in my chest. "I need you to help him calm down. This isn't appropriate behavior for a shared space." "Appropriate according to whom?" She responded sharply. "He's autistic. This is how he experiences joy and regulates his sensory needs." "I'm autistic too," I replied, my voice rising slightly as my distress increased. "And right now, his regulation is preventing me from regulating. We both have needs here." Jasper continued his chaotic play, seemingly oblivious to our conversation. He had discovered that he could create a whirlpool effect by running in circles, and he was delighting in the sensation while shouting his excitement at volumes that made my ears ring. Other community center members had begun to gather at the edge of the pool area, drawn by the commotion. I saw Gregory approaching with his physical therapy equipment, only to stop short when he witnessed the scene. Iris emerged from the women's locker room, took one look at the chaos, and turned around without a word. "Ma'am," Gregory said gently, approaching Roxanne with the careful politeness of someone trying to avoid conflict. "Would it be possible to help your son use a quieter voice? Some of us are here for medical therapy, and we need a calm environment." Roxanne's response was swift and sharp. "He's autistic," she declared, as if those two words should end all discussion. "If you can't handle neurodivergent children expressing themselves naturally, maybe you should go to the main pool." The dismissiveness in her voice sent a shockwave through me. Here was a woman using her son's autism diagnosis as a shield against any request for accommodation or consideration of others. She was demanding that everyone else adapt to Jasper's needs while showing zero willingness to help him adapt to the shared nature of the space. "Being autistic doesn't mean he can't learn appropriate behavior," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "I've been coming here for 3 years, and I've never disrupted other people's use of this space. Autism isn't an excuse for inconsideration." Roxanne turned to face me fully, her expression hardening into something I barely recognized. "How dare you judge my parenting? You don't have children. You don't understand what it's like to raise an autistic child in a world that constantly tries to suppress who they are." "I am an autistic child who was raised," I shot back, my composure finally cracking. "My mother taught me that my needs mattered, but so did everyone else's. She taught me that being different didn't give me permission to make other people miserable." The hot tub area had gone silent except for Jasper's continued splashing and vocalizations. Gregory had retreated to a safe distance, and Iris had disappeared entirely. Several other community center members lingered nearby, clearly uncomfortable with the confrontation but uncertain how to intervene. "Your internalized ableism is showing," Roxanne said coldly. "You've been trained to suppress your authentic self to make neurotypical people comfortable. I refuse to do that to my son." Her words hit me like a physical blow. To have my own autism and my lived experience dismissed as internalized ableism because I believed in mutual respect and shared responsibility felt like a betrayal of everything I thought we had built together as autism community members. "This isn't about suppressing authenticity," I replied, my voice steady despite the tears threatening to spill over. "This is about teaching him that other people matter too, that his needs don't automatically override everyone else's needs." Jasper, perhaps sensing the tension in the adult conversation, began vocalizing even louder, his excitement escalating to the point where his behaviors were becoming genuinely disruptive to the entire facility. The sound echoed through the pool area and into the adjacent gym, causing several people to pause their workouts and look toward the commotion. At that moment, Trevor, the community center manager, appeared at the edge of the hot tub area. He was a kind man in his 50s who had always been supportive of accommodating different needs while maintaining facility policies. "Ladies, I'm getting complaints about noise levels," he said diplomatically. "Could we work together to find a solution that works for everyone?" Roxanne immediately went on the offensive. "Are you discriminating against my disabled son? Because that's what this sounds like? He has every right to be here and to express himself authentically." Trevor looked genuinely pained. "Ma'am, no one is questioning your son's right to be here. But we do have quiet space policies that apply to everyone. Would it be possible to help him lower his voice volume? He's autistic, Roxanne repeated, louder this time, as if volume would somehow strengthen her argument. He can't help how he expresses himself. If people don't like it, they can go somewhere else. I watched Trevor struggle with the situation, clearly caught between his desire to be inclusive and his responsibility to maintain a usable space for all community center members. This was exactly the kind of scenario that gave autism advocacy a bad name, where demands for accommodation became demands for exemption from all social consideration. Roxanne, I tried one final time, my voice soft but firm. Please listen to me as one autism community member to another. What you're teaching Jasper right now isn't self-advocacy, it's entitlement. You're teaching him that his needs will always come first, that other people's comfort and access don't matter, and that his autism diagnosis gives him unlimited permission to impact others negatively. She stared at me with an expression of pure hostility. You have no idea what you're talking about. You don't know what it's like to fight for your child every single day. You're right, I acknowledged. I don't know what it's like to parent an autistic child, but I know what it's like to be an autistic child, whose mother had to make impossible choices between advocating for my needs and teaching me to consider others. And my mother found ways to do both. Jasper was still creating chaos in the hot tub, completely unaware that his behavior had sparked a community center crisis. His joy was genuine and pure, but it was having a devastating impact on everyone else's ability to use the space peacefully. My mother taught me that accommodation goes both ways, I continued, my voice growing stronger as I found my footing. She fought for my right to exist in spaces, but she also taught me that existing in spaces meant learning to coexist with others. She never let my autism become an excuse for making other people suffer. Roxanne's face had flushed red with anger. Your mother damaged you. She taught you to hate yourself and to prioritize other people's comfort over your own authentic expression. I will not do that to Jasper. The accusation that my beloved mother had damaged me was the final straw. My mother, who had spent countless hours helping me navigate a world that wasn't built for autistic people, who had advocated fiercely for my needs while still teaching me empathy and consideration for others, who had given me the tools to build a life where I could be authentically autistic without harming others. My mother saved me, I said, my voice ringing with conviction. She taught me that being autistic didn't make me less responsible for how my actions affected others. She showed me that true self-advocacy meant fighting for spaces where everyone could exist comfortably, not demanding that everyone else sacrifice their comfort for mine. Trevor had been listening to our exchange with increasing concern. As Jasper's vocalizations reached new heights and water continued to splash over the hot tub edges, creating safety hazards on the tile floor, he made his decision. Ma'am, I'm going to need to ask you to help your son calm down, or we'll need to ask you to use a different area of the facility, Trevor said firmly but kindly. This level of disruption is affecting other members' ability to use the space safely. Roxanne's response was explosive. This is discrimination. I'm reporting this facility to the Disability Rights Commission. You're violating the Americans with Disabilities Act. The ADA requires reasonable accommodation, Trevor replied calmly. But it doesn't require us to allow behavior that prevents other members from using the facilities. We're happy to work with you to find ways for Jasper to enjoy the center while respecting other members' needs. But Roxanne was beyond reason. Come on, Jasper, she said loudly, helping her son out of the hot tub. These people don't want autistic children here. We're leaving. Jasper, confused by the sudden change and the tension in his mother's voice, began to cry. His distress was genuine and heartbreaking, and I felt a wave of sympathy for him. None of this was his fault. He was a child who needed guidance and structure, not a mother who used his disability as a weapon against anyone who asked for basic consideration. Jasper isn't the problem, I called out as they gathered their things. The problem is teaching him that other people don't matter. The problem is using his autism as an excuse instead of helping him learn to navigate the world successfully. Roxanne turned back one final time, her eyes blazing with fury. You're not an advocate. You're a traitor to your own community. You make me sick. With that, she stormed out of the pool area, dragging a confused and upset Jasper behind her. The sudden silence felt almost oppressive after the chaos of the previous hour. Gregory, Iris, and several other community center members slowly began to emerge from their hiding spots, looking shell-shocked by what they had witnessed. Are you okay? Trevor asked me gently, sitting on the edge of the hot tub where I remained. Trembling with adrenaline and emotional exhaustion. I don't know, I answered honestly. I've never had my own autism used against me like that before. I've never been called a traitor to my community for believing that we should consider other people's needs too. Gregory approached hesitantly, his physical therapy equipment in hand. Young man, I want you to know that I have nothing but respect for how you handled that situation. My grandson is autistic, and his parents worked very hard to help him understand how to behave appropriately in different settings. What that woman was doing wasn't helping her son at all. Iris nodded in agreement. I've worked with plenty of neurodivergent patients in my job, and the ones who do best are the ones whose families have taught them that their needs matter, but so do everyone else's. That little boy deserves better guidance than he's getting. Over the following days, I found myself replaying the confrontation obsessively, questioning everything I thought I knew about autism advocacy and community. Had I been wrong to speak up? Was I really betraying other autistic people by asking for basic consideration of shared spaces? Was my belief in mutual accommodation actually internalized ableism? I decided to reach out to Dr. Amanda Chen, the psychologist who had helped me with my autism diagnosis and had become something of a mentor over the years. I explained the situation and my conflicted feelings about it. Xander, she said during our video call, what you experienced was not autism advocacy, it was entitlement, disguised as advocacy. Real advocacy means fighting for the right to exist in spaces while still respecting the rights of others to exist in those same spaces. But what if I was wrong? I asked. What if I was being ableist by expecting a child to control his behavior? You weren't expecting him to stop being autistic, Dr. Chen replied. You were expecting his parent to help him learn appropriate ways to express his autism in different settings. That's not ableism, that's good parenting and responsible community membership. She helped me understand that my mother's approach had indeed been the right one. Teaching me to be authentically autistic while still considering my impact on others hadn't damaged me. It had given me the tools to build a successful, fulfilling life where I could be myself without alienating the people around me. The goal of autism advocacy should be creating a world where autistic people can thrive while living in community with others, Dr. Chen explained. It shouldn't be about demanding that everyone else sacrifice their needs so that autistic people never have to learn any adaptive skills. The following week, I returned to the community center with some trepidation, unsure what kind of reception I would receive. Trevor approached me as soon as I arrived. I wanted to let you know that we've implemented some new policies based on what happened last week, he said. We're going to start offering structured sensory time slots for children who need more intensive sensory experiences. And we're also going to be clearer about our quiet space expectations for all members. What about Roxanne and Jasper? I asked. They're welcome back anytime, but they'll need to follow the same policies as everyone else, Trevor replied. I've spoken with our board, and we all agree that accommodation doesn't mean unlimited permission to disrupt other members' experiences. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The community center was taking a balanced approach that honored everyone's needs rather than prioritizing one person's comfort over everyone else's. As I settled into the hot tub that afternoon, I reflected on everything I had learned from this experience. I thought about my mother, who had passed away 2 years earlier, and how proud she would have been of my willingness to stand up for both my own needs and the needs of others in my community. She had taught me that being autistic was not something to be ashamed of, but it also wasn't an excuse to avoid learning how to live considerately with others. She had shown me that true strengths came from finding ways to be authentically myself, while still being a good community member. I thought about Jasper, and I hoped that someday he would have caregivers who would teach him these same lessons. He deserved to learn that his autism was a valid and important part of who he was, but that it didn't exempt him from learning how to coexist peacefully with others. He deserved to develop the skills that would help him build genuine relationships and find acceptance in the wider world. The hot tub incident had taught me that advocacy is complex and sometimes uncomfortable. It had shown me that standing up for balanced accommodation sometimes means being willing to challenge other people in your own community. It had reminded me that true inclusion benefits everyone, not just the people asking for accommodation. Most importantly, it had reinforced my belief that my mother's approach to raising an autistic child had been exactly right. She had fought for my right to exist in the world as an autistic person. But she had also equipped me with the tools I needed to exist successfully and considerately alongside others. As I soaked in the warm water, listening to the gentle hum of the jets and feeling my nervous system finally beginning to settle, I realized that this space meant even more to me now than it had before. It wasn't just a place where I could regulate my sensory needs. It was a place where I had learned to advocate not just for myself, but for the kind of world I wanted to live in. A world where autistic people could be authentically autistic while still being responsible community members. A world where accommodation meant creating space for everyone to thrive, not demanding that some people sacrifice their needs for others. A world where being different was celebrated, but being inconsiderate was not excused. I opened my book and settled deeper into the warm water, grateful for the lesson I had learned and the strength I had found to stand up for what I believed was right. The hot tub was quiet again, peaceful again, accessible again, but for everyone who needed this kind of space to heal and restore themselves. And somewhere in that peaceful moment, I could almost hear my mother's voice, proud and loving, reminding me that being autistic had never meant I had to choose between being authentic and being kind. She had taught me that I could be both, and that in being both, I could help create a better world for everyone.